There is a fifth dimension.
About the unknown.
Beyond that which is known to man.
The Garden of Thought.
The Babylon Project was our last best hope for peace.
Unexplained.
Mythology.
This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call...
The Garden of Thought with Jeff Lippman.
Eventually, our sun will grow cold and go out.
You're listening to something much bigger, something hidden in plain sight.
It won't just take us. It'll take Marilyn Monroe and Lao Tzu and Einstein. All of us was for nothing unless we go to the stars.
What you're about to learn will completely change the way you experience your mind, your thoughts, and yourself.
And to make sure that history never forgets the name.
The Garden of Thought.
Welcome everyone into the Garden of Thought, and we're welcoming back who I call the Sinister Minister, but he's not the Sinister Minister. He's not really sinister either. It's Joseph J. Alexander. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. It's been odd this week with the weather here in New England.
Oh yeah, the nor'easter that was supposed to come in like a lion and then never really made it past lamb status.
I mean, I got some water in my basement, so...
Yeah, well, bad enough then. Yeah, I'm in Maryland. We probably got less than you did, which is not unusual. But I'm sure there's some geological, meteorological reason, but I would think it's the Chesapeake Bay effect. It sort of cuts a little ridge and things.
Yeah.
I don't understand these things well enough, or maybe I understand them exactly well enough. In any event, Joseph has been on the Gospel of Thomas show. That was technically a Chronicles of Quan, because Sakura Quan was our guest co-host at the time, and Quan's a talker, which makes him great as a guest and great as a guest co-host. But he was pretty quiet then, because me and Joseph were like, bonding over and talking about all sorts of stuff, and we didn't even get into the stuff that like he really wants to talk about. I'm like, I have to bring you back for the regular Garden show, and he's like, okay. And Quan's like, what about me? I'm like, what about you? No, I'd say that. No, definitely not. Those dudes are busy. When they're not out wrestling and have real jobs, they have real jobs and real lives and get some time off. Anyway, so. Like, I'm acting like everybody who's listening to the show listened to the last show, so tell them a little bit about yourself.
Well, let's see here. I've been in the wrestling business for 21 years next month. All manners of things, ring announcer, commentary, manager, had a few matches at my side. Currently, the company that I co-own is on a hiatus just because of medical issues between myself and my financial partner. Both of us need to get healthy at the same time. And in the meantime, I keep myself busy with my YouTube and my Spotify. That's the Full Circle Radio Network, where I co-host a wrestling-oriented show called White Heat. I co-host a blind draw movie review podcast called Wild Card Cinema, which also has a spin-off where we do watch-alongs. That's called Cinematic Jackass. And then I have a personal vlog type of entry show called Catharsis, where I cover everything from religion to local politics to global politics.
Oh, fun.
And, everything in between. Yeah. So yeah, that's how I keep myself busy. But yeah, I appeared last time because we were talking about ghosts and the paranormal, and we started spinning off on world religions, which I have some knowledge of. I will never say I'm an expert in anything. But I mean, I teach some things on it, so that's where the ball kept rolling, and he asked me back. So
Yeah. Well, listen, you teach on some things, and this is a podcast. This is not the great courses. So, your expertise, whatever degree it is more than my expertise, and hopefully more or the same as the listeners. And maybe if there's listeners who feel they have the same or equal expertise in certain areas, maybe they'll let themselves be known as well. So, in any event, some of the things that I know that we're going to talk about, we're going to go a little bit into, or maybe a lot, into Celtic mythology and folklore, which they sort of intertwine as I understand Celtic, which is a little bit. We're going to talk a little Slavic, which is interesting because, as I understand, it's mostly oral, and not a lot of it's was originally written down. I'm sure plenty's been written down since, and maybe get into a couple of other areas as well. But so, what I know about the Celts before starting to do the show basically comes from Edward Rutherford, the historical fiction author, who educated me that the Celts are not, from Ireland and Scotland originally. They were like basically like the original Ashkenazics, sort of like in the East, South Central East Europe. And they sort of like at the base of the Danube and sort of followed the Danube up sort of basically north into the west. And then I looked into a little bit more, and other sources seem to confirm it. And I can't remember who it was. This was probably not Rutherford himself, but someone probably more of a horror bent said, yeah, if you just trace the use of wicker men, you can trace the tracks of the Celts, which of course made me fall in love immediately. I recently, one of the guests, probably a show that will air 2 or 3 weeks before this one, we talk a little bit about Celtic, but he was more interested in that, like, how myths tied to lost civilizations or lost civilization. I wanted to get more into the mythos, so there might be some familiar names, but there won't be that much overlap. So, without further ado, first of all, correct or clarify anything that I said, and lead on where you want to lead.
But it's your show, so I'd like to know where guide me where you want to know, and I can talk about some things. And but yeah, your synopsis is astute in the fact that one of the basics of theology classes that I teach talks about how the intersection of different belief systems based on the travel of Europe, and how you can see things. You can see Celtic deities and stuff. You can see embodiments of them in statues form all the way over to Central and Eastern Europe, and vice versa, where you can see the things. And it's because of how the tribes traveled, and especially during warring times, and how they would put up statues or monuments to. So that's how things got, I don't want to say muddled, but I want to say integrated.
Yeah, the history of humanity is the history of integration one way or another, which, I'm sure when you talk about world politics and local politics, probably both things come up from, time to time, like every day. And we'll try to avoid that and stick to, I guess, elder times. So, to your understanding, where would their actual origin point be? We don't need to go back to out of Africa, a million years ago. This is the first Homo erectus came from, But as we might know, a tribe that might have called itself something that sounds like Celt today.
Right. So, and that's the thing is, looking back to the Celts, you're looking at people who it's prior to the Anglo-Saxons, basically. It's not really positive on where they came, because there are some Norse who settled in the Isles, who then and then went from there, along with those from Western Europe. So that's how that's how, if you actually look at Norse and Celtic influences in their structure of deities, there's a lot of comparison.
Yeah.
Also, the Celts were very compartmentalized. I'm actually just pulling in my notes as this. So most belief systems have their own gods that they worship, or that they adhere for certain things. And so we know, like most of the old religions have a god of war. The Celts had several. They had Bandua, Chicabui, Placidius, Nate, Segomo, Tetutes. Basically, because of the fact that their tribes were all small and the Isles have so much coastline, the tribes all had to defend their little parts of their coastline, and they all had their own variation of their god of war that they gave homage to in order to defend them.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, you need your local god. I mean, it's like that old James Garner movie, support your local sheriff.
Yeah. And that's one of the other things too, is it happened a lot with it happened with all the civilizations, but it was very often with a lot of the early European sects, was that there were tiers to the gods.
Yeah.
Where the higher gods were only spoken to, paid homage by the ruler of the land, the lord, the king, whoever had that. And the peasants, or the people or the tribes people who were lower, would never have to pray to that god, because that wasn't considered, they weren't considered worthy enough, because that god is like an overshadowing thing, whereas they had their gods for the littler things. It was very, what's the word I want to use here? I think I have it written down somewhere. It's basically it's like a corporate structure.
Yeah. Hierarchical.
Yeah, hierarchical. That's right. I don't know why that slipped my mind, but yes, it's hierarchical. Yes.
Because it's probably not a word that you use every day. It's got a lot of syllables. But yeah, so like, in Athens, they worshipped Athena. In Sparta, they probably were more of an Ares kind of place. And then like in, Corinth, I don't know if it was important or not, but, maybe they're stuck with, I don't know, Hephaestus or something, and someone else is, Hermes is their patron god, and for some of them it's probably someone, and then the fun guys had Dionysus, and they're like, hey, we got the wine up here. So
right. And the commoners they were considered lower gods. I mean, just in the terms that are used by historians. But I mean, that's where you look at it like the lords of the land in the Celtic Isles had no need to pray to the goddess of horses.
Right. No horses.
But the blacksmiths did, because the blacksmiths worked with the animals.
Right.
And that's how the Celts worshipped Epona, the goddess of horses. And this is the part where you travel along in Europe. You can find monuments to Epona located from Ireland all the way to Transylvania.
Right, well, Epona, obviously, anybody who knows roots of language can hear the Greek root in Epona, which, I love that most people know Epona from, or anything from a hippopotamus, which is literally it translates to river horse, which, whoever came up with that name was obviously drunk at the time, and everyone who agreed to it, and we're still agreeing to it, 3,000 years later or 4,000 years later. Come on, we can't come up with a better name for a hippopotamus than river horse?
Yeah, it's just it's the matter of the evolution of the language over the time. But and that's the way because it's like the Epona was there for the Celts, but the Welsh had Rhiannon, who was basically the same goddess. Same goddesses in Egypt. They had Astarte, and in Africa they prayed to Shango. But it was all the same. It was all the same deity as far as what that went. That was one of the commoner gods.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term, derogatory.
No. I don't think that you are, and I think anybody who would actually really care about this stuff is either a professor of comparative mythology or died a couple millennia ago. So you probably don't need to worry too much about it. I of course know Cernunnos because he's got goat antlers, but he's basically Thor with antlers. He's got the sort of storm god.
This is the horned god of the hunt.
Of the hunt. He's not. Is he also like a weather god, a storm god, or just of the hunt?
Not really. He's sometimes known as Gaia's liege. So he does. So Gaia is the Mother Earth.
Sure.
And sometimes he carries out her duties for her.
Okay, so he can pretty much do anything if she deputizes him to do it. So he's not the storm guard, but he may in fact be on that Tuesday the storm guard, where she decides she wants to do it for a couple of seasons or a couple of epochs. He's off. He's back to looking for stags and bucks and things for whomever, red deer. All right, well that's cool. So the other thing I know about the Celts, and this is probably more limited to Ireland than it is to, the Celtic world writ large, is that they had like waves of invaders, which made their way into the History of Invasions book or books, which I guess invaders were translated into the gods, or more fun, they actually were gods, and the gods, of course, assimilated themselves into humanity through the sons of God seeing the daughters of Adam were fair and took whatever they wanted as wives, kind of thing. Anunnaki, which is my preferred narrative, of course, but probably was more just waves of invaders and Danes, Swedes, and then Northmen and Frisians and whomever else that would come in, and they're 6'2" and you're 5'3", and you're like, oh, they must be gods.
Yeah, and that's when the Celts kind of had to. That's when their stories started spreading more far and wide. That's when you started getting stories of like the god Cuchulainn, who was the warrior god, who died he was so adherent in battle that when he could not stand anymore, he had them prop him up tied to a post so he was still standing on the battleground so he could still fight.
Prideful.
Yeah.
Or responsible.
Right. And that's the people want to talk about like the Irish temper or just the perseverance of the Celts. That's where those stories come from. The tales of Cuchulainn and the tales of Finn McGool, the Eye of Valor, all that stuff.
Right. That's Patrick was my guest, Shenard, and we talked about Finn McCool and the Eye of Valor. Now he described the Eye of Valor as almost being like Sauron. I thought he was just a giant, either with one eye or with one eye missing. So, like, I always picture him sort of as a Cyclops, but maybe he just had a.
So Valor and Finnegan was very much a Celtic rendition of David and Goliath.
Okay.
But what happens is Finn takes one of the eyes of Valor and meets it and gains his power.
So the typical eye thing, which is big, but instead the bad guy loses the eye and the hero takes the eye, and then when he got the eye, I know Finn McCool was sort of like Irish Hercules, so he got the, not exactly Hercules, but he's a big strong hero, but not always the brightest of fellas. Another
comparison for McGool and Valor would be Beowulf and Grendel. Almost the same story.
Oh, okay. Yeah, very, very cool. Yeah, I at some point I probably need to get around to Beowulf and someone explains me, because, you cannot imagine how, well, maybe you can, how anticlimactic it was. Like, Grendel's like tearing up everyone. Beowulf gets there for one night, rips his arm off. He's like, yeah. And it turns out that his mom is the worst monster. Maybe I just missed the point that Beowulf is just so much higher than, the regular people, even his band of merry friends. It's sort of like Thor in the MCU, where he's got like the Warrior 4, or, the Lady Sith and the Warrior 3 or whatever. They're not Odin, but they're better than those normal guys with like the shields and the spear. There's again, a hierarchy of Asgardians. Maybe it was just that. Maybe I missed that. There's always that. There's Robin Hood had his merry men, but some of them we knew their names, and others were just the red shirts from Star Trek.
Yep.
All right. So obviously there's waves, so there's more than one pantheon. Who would we consider like sort of the king and queen of the gods? Like, who would be the Zeus and Hera, or Odin and Freya or Frigga?
So for the Celts, I would say why is her name escaping me? The head of the Tuatha Danu would be the queen. But yeah, the Tuatha are the basically like the gods who protect the entire realm, and she sees over them. What would be?
All right, when it pops into your head, you can just say it. And would their pantheon be similar in style as other pantheons? That there's a god of war, there's a storm god, there's a god of medicine, a god of metallurgy or building things.
I mean, so I'm trying to think here because as far as the Celts go, I don't think they had a king of the gods. The closest to like their god of thunder would be Tyrannus, but that's the closest to like their version of Zeus, not Thor.
Was that their name or was that a Romanized name? Because it sounds like a very Roman type of or Greek type of name.
Well, it's probably pronounced differently. It's Taranis.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not that. But either that or maybe Esus. ESUS. This is where I wish I could phone a friend because I would have. No, wait. No, Zeus is wrong. Why am I thinking? I don't know. I should have referred more. I actually know someone there, an author here in New England. They have a lot of stuff published. She writes a lot of stuff on Celtic mythology and the history of the Fae, the fair folk, and everything. Her name is Morgan Daimler. She just had another book come out too. She is a plethora of information, and she's actually been doing a lot of Instagram reels lately, explaining like how people are getting things wrong, like talking about how people worship the Morrigan at Samhain, but really it's not the Morrigan's holiday, and they talk about it based on the fact that there's a battle that happens on Samhain that the Morrigan was consulted about 2 weeks prior to the battle. That's where they get confused. So yeah,
I actually did. Okay, so I've talked about the Morrigan before. So, and the Morrigan, as near as I can tell, is as close as possible to Freya from the Norse. I mean, basically the psycho life, sort of a Valkyrie, but sort of a leader of Valkyrie-like.
Triple goddess aspect of the Maiden Mother and the Crown.
Yep. So those of you wrestling fans, Lyra Valkyria, really the Morrigan. That she is. When you call a bird girl, I mean, the Raven actually is the Morrigan's. So much like Odin had a couple of ravens there. So don't make fun of the outfit. Just now make fun of her that she picked the word Valkyria instead of Morrigan, and so to confuse all of you. I mean, that's on her. But anyway,
plus that, they kind of muddled her when they started doing those vignettes when she first came out, because at the same time she was like, I worship Morgan, was the exact same time that Isla Dawn and Alba Fire were doing their witch stuff. And Isla's actual practicing witch. I'm not sure if Alba is, but I know Isla is. And so the fact is, like, you're muddling the fact that you've got someone already doing this gimmick, even though it's not a gimmick, it's an actual lifestyle. And it got lost in the sauce.
Yeah, well, I mean, and also doing it better, to be frank. But I mean, and don't make me want Isla Dawn on the show more than I already do. But what can you do? All right, so other things with Celts and sort of the mythology. I mean, a lot of people. Like the Picts are like sort of a like Scottish tribe, sort of mysterious. Are they Celtic or are they pre-Celtic, or do we even know?
So it all depends, because everything around the Isles there, with Scotland and with Wales and with Ireland, the everything it kind of gets muddled up. Where depending on what tribes you're looking back at, some may acknowledge the straight Celtic ones, and some may have some of their own. I'm trying to think here, because like Lu, Lugh, the god Lu. He's the sun god. He's the Lunasad is the solstice that's named after him. Yes, summer solstice, Lunasad. Yeah. and he's basically the sun god. And he's Celt, but you also will find worshippers of blue in Scotland and Wales, going back, not just modern day. So it all depends. It's sort of like how do I put this? It's sort of like how you have all the different Christian sects, and the trying to figure out the exact differences between a Methodist and a Presbyterian and an Episcopalian, and when they're all kind of following the same outline, just with different names in between. That's kind of what it's like.
We actually did a show where we tried to do that, and the person who actually presented, the guest was Chris Ames, and the show is called, I think, Trinity Infinity. So where we tried to actually, he did, because he's the one who was educated. He was actually a Mormon minister at some point. Anyway, it's a good show if you're interested in that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, I think the point you're making, and I'm sort of obscuring here, is that while we would like all things to fit into a neat, sort of bucket of, this is Celtic mythology, this is Greek mythology, this is Norse mythology, that's just not how it is. These things are over hundreds, if not thousands of years. They change from town to town. They change from time to time. Just like fish stories or operator, things changed. And, if there's a drought, the storm god's more important. If there's a deluge, someone else maybe is more important. If you're finding a lot of fish and you have no red meat, then maybe Demeter or Artemis is more important, or Cernunnos, the hunt god. But if meat's aplenty, then maybe something else is important. Maybe the plague hit you, so where's that medical? Where's that the Hermes or Toth, is Toth that? I don't know. Maybe it's Osiris. I don't know. Again, who knows? Anyway, okay, there's a figure that I'm aware of, Albion, which I'm not sure if this is mythology or just folklore. I believe it was like the white giant of Britain that was like defeated by Brutus, the grandson of Aeneas, or the grandson of Romulus and Remus, or Remus. Yeah, one of them anyway, and then led the mighty descendants of Troy, who of course were the descendants of Rome at that point, into Britain. Which is actually interesting, because at some point they discovered that like a lot of the people around Stonehenge, from Stonehenge time, had like Turkic DNA in them, which actually fits very nicely into that little parable and myth. So most myths have at least some kernel of truth, or at least you can retrofit them to find the kernel of truth, whichever way you want to look at it. But is Albion Celtic, or is that entirely a different kind of Britannia?
So Albion is, that's the original name for the British Isles, but Albion, like in my studies, Albion was the name of the son of Poseidon.
Okay.
So yeah.
So was Albion one of the Cyclops, or a different son of Poseidon? Because these gods have a lot of.
He was the giant that was killed by Heracles.
Okay. All right. So in showing up on Britain, that was just borrowing.
Yeah.
Oh, that's disappointing. All right.
Yeah, because I think it was named that, and I can't per se say who named it, but on ancient maps before it was inhabited greatly, it was listed on maps as to Albion. So my only guess can be, and this is just my educated guess, is seafaring Greeks tracked the island, saw that it was giant, named it after the giant of Poseidon, because it was a bigger island than what they were used to seeing compared to the small islands that you would see in the Mediterranean.
And they probably saw those cliffs of Dover first, which are all, calcite or limestone? I think it's whatever it is, it's white. Everyone knows that the cliffs of Dover are white. I don't know what the geological composition of it is, but I'm sure in some show somebody said what they are. One of my shows, probably a million others as well.
Right. That's like here in Connecticut, we have it's a state park, but there's a mountain called Sleeping Giant. It goes back to the ancient folklore of they thought that was the sleeping giant, so that's why. So it could very well be the same thought process that went into the ancient maps.
Makes sense. And there's the Giant's Causeway, which is sort of between Ireland and Scotland, but most of it's under the sea. But it looks like the same kind of like volcanic, almost like stalagmite type rocks, except they're like flat at the top. And the only reason, I know it's like nothing so unusual is because I was actually in Hell, Grand Cayman, and saw the same thing, like in Grand Cayman, which is basically, it's in the Caribbean for anyone who doesn't know, and it's basically paradise. And then you have like literally a hellscape, these black stalagmites coming up from the ground. That's the ground. And it's like, all black, volcanic, and these apparently were shaved, which was probably shaved flat by a glacier coming by them like really fast and cutting them up. And, and the oceans were lower back then, because the water was in the glaciers. But I know there's like a whole myth about how Albion and the Giant of Scotland, who was even bigger, not Albion, Finn McCool and the Giant of Scotland were going to fight, but Finn saw the giant and he was like really big and scary. And then like Finn sort of pulled a Thor trick but his wife came up with the scheme of dressing him up like a baby. And and she's nursing him and she's like, she's, rocking, to sleep her giant sized baby. And so the Scotland baby's like, or giant is like, if that's the Irish giant baby, imagine how big the father is. I better get out of here. And then I guess threw a bunch of rocks to divide Ireland from Scotland. And, because, just like Kronos ate a rock instead of Zeus, our mythical beings are often fooled by babies and gods dressing as women tricks. Yes, and then that, of course, is not just Norse and Germanic, because it was also, Italian and Greek and other places as well. So, people, I think we've come a long way that we are no longer fooled by rocks as people, especially when we're trying to eat them, or giant babies that have facial hair and bone structure that you can see is not, maybe would be a clue it's not a baby. In ancient times, they apparently could discern that, especially if you were a giant or a god of enormous stature. Those things were too beneath you to notice. So, I guess that's part of that, tree of knowledge thing. When we bit the apple and, committed the original sin, we got the ability to discern what is and what isn't a baby and what is and what isn't a rock. There it is, right there. That is my contribution to the world of knowledge.
You have to remember too, it wasn't an apple; it was a quince.
Yeah, right. Of course, and a quince is what?
It's a fruit. Amazingly enough, there's my wife was looking because I had something growing in my front yard because we have like a retaining wall and steps leading up and flower beds there. It's how it was when we bought the house. There was a mulberry bush that we relocated this spring, but over like 8 feet to the left of it, we didn't notice there was something else growing, and now it's like 4 feet tall. Went out and Google lens it, and it's a quince tree.
So you've got forbidden fruit in your yard, basically.
Yep.
I mean, are you afraid to eat it or no?
When it starts fruiting, we'll see. It's going to be a couple of years.
Okay. I mean, somebody already took the bullet for you, literally, and so you might as well. I knew it wasn't an apple. I knew that it was just a red fruit, and I knew that most scholars thought that, a lot of people say a pomegranate or just some sort of red fruit. I didn't know that it had been determined to be a quince. I'm happy enough for it to be a quince as anything else. Especially since clearly I'm not exactly clear what a quince was until moments ago. And I'm still not sure I would recognize a quince as other being vaguely a red fruit kind of thing. Yeah. All right. So we can maybe move off of Celtic. I mean, we can always jump back and forth, but this is not a college structure. So if you come up with anything or whatever, we can bounce back and forth. But let's jump a little into Slavic. Because I think when people think Slavic, you think Russian, you think, vampires, you think werewolves, you think that it's definitely going to be, exactly like Thor and Odin and all that. And apparently Odin is more Celtic and might have been sort of a compromise that entered the Norse Germanic mythology once they sort of blended with the Celts, and I don't know if you know anything about that or if it's even important because we're sort of moving on to Slavic and maybe we should stick with it. But like, what is your basic understanding of Slavic with the caveat for everything? And you said before is that there's no one brand of Slavic.
Yeah, I mean, so the Slavic stuff that I've looked into, I have like 8 documents open. Make sure I didn't. So yeah. I actually started researching Slavic when I was looking into what they call dark gods, which are not for black magic. It's just the origins of them are shrouded more in mystery, and the fact that it's they are usually talked about when you're dealing with personal growth, so what they call shadow work, and plus they just for some reason, I think this could it's the stereotype of everything like Russian and Eastern European is gray and bleak. Yes. Seems to go all the way back to the origins of their deities. Fair enough. Like one of the most famous deities would be Baba Yaga. And she's the witch goddess. She's the crone.
Right.
She's people see her as evil, but really she's just she's the embodiment of the eldest of the deities who is there to share her wisdom in every way. Or another one a lot of people might be familiar with if they read or watched American Gods is Chernobog. Chernobog is it's literally translated into it means black god. Okay. He's he only appears at night. He's the ruler of the Nav, which is the Slavic word for the dead. They always say he was behind everything bad, weak, and they say that he was behind everything bad, weak, and vile in human nature, and he bestowed natural disasters upon the mortal world.
So he's the devil, basically.
Yeah, I mean, they call him the god of misfortune and bad luck, or the god of death and destruction. He was said to be intentionally malicious and the corrupter of everything pleasant. But he was the part of the duality of a lot of Slavic gods, where like with the Egyptians, how they have Ra and Set, light and dark, day and night. Chernobog is usually included with Belobog, who's the god of light and goodness.
Of course, Bella, Bellagio, Bellissimo. I mean, I get it. It's like he's like Jessica Rabbit. I'm not bad. I'm just drawn this way. I mean, I'm like Galactus. He needed to eat planets because that's to keep balance. It's not. I mean, he might be evil, but he's evil because there has to be evil to so that what good is.
Yeah, but. It's really the fact that he wasn't originally viewed as a demon, but as the god of the winter months. Mm-hmm. That's how people are like, darkness and death. It's because that's when all the clouds go away. That's when it gets cold. That's when it gets dark early. So obviously, that's it's Chernobog is very very comparison to Hades in the Greeks.
Yeah, flu and cold season. The leaves come down. A lot of the animals go to sleep. It's probably harder to find things to eat.
Right, exactly. But that's all he was, and it's he was denoted as basically the god of winter and everything. The demonic connotations that people think about when you think about Chernobog came around in the early 12th century, and Christianity made its way through Northern Asia.
And the Slavs had a notoriously bad health insurance system, so your flu shots were not free. So it was really bad. But that is so okay. Duality. That's very Zoroastrian. Maybe it was just an import from the south that made its way up north. I mean, you have a lot of Iranic Aryan peoples that came from east to west, and someone south, someone north, some are blonde and blue-eyed, and some look exactly like the Persians now, and not that the Persians all look monolithic, and some of them went on to do other things too, like become Armenians, or like conquer North Africa and go into Spain and then decide to turn around and go back. So I mean, there's my favorite Alaric, king of the Andals and the Alans. just because, it's the most Game of Thrones title I know out of actual history.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think. So the Slavs had their own, trying to think here. Like their own version of Zeus, their own version of their god of gods was, forgive me if I pronounce it wrong, it's Rod or Rod, R-O-D.
Okay.
But he was the supreme god, known as the creator of all life and existence. That was the one that ruled over all of the ones of the Slavs. He's related to the creation story that you find in the Bible. He's the one who created the world and everything. He created heaven and earth, yada yada yada. Yeah.
Is Slavic where Paternus came from, which apparently at some point turned to Zeus or Allfather, is another name for Rod, or is it just entirely different things?
I think it's just the comparison of everyone has their own version and their own tales of such, so that's why it kind of depends on wherever they.
It's the only name I know, so there's throughout Cornunus before over there. I know the Morrigan just because I did a deep dive into Freya. The whole thing is Freya and Frigga the same person. I'm like, yeah, they are. That was my conclusion anyway.
But and the thing is, Rod is considered the god of gods, but there's also another supreme god who's actually their god of thunder and lightning, who I guess you would be closer to Thor, but for some reason, depending on what you're reading and who is writing it, they'll list Perun as the supreme god. Perun. I want to say Perun. Maybe it's Perun. Maybe I'm completely wrong, and it's something that I do not know how to pronounce.
That's fine. But that's interesting because usually, it's very frequently there's a primordial god that has to do with the heavens and the skies, and and there might also be one that's the waters and or the land or whatever. But it's not unusual for there to be the sort of like the great grandfather god, but for whatever reason or reasons, it was always the plan. They sort of are not that invested in their creations, and they sort of leave it to their kids, and sometimes their kids have problems with their kids, and it very often is like that third generation, that Horus that takes over, the arguably Jesus that takes over, Zeus who took over for Kronos, who took over for Uranus. It's not. I think they're similar in Babylonian and Sumerian, but it sounds like in Slavic, the creator god stuck around and was still very much involved. Maybe not in the day-to-day administration, but was still there. It's not like Enlil and Enki who could do whatever they want, or Anu was like, yeah, I don't give a shit. You guys work it out. It sounds like Perun was still around.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the comparison of how there's especially a lot of the Slavic and Eastern European deities are in close relation to the Greeks, like the goddess Demeter in Greek, where she's the goddess of the harvest and she dies in the winter and yada yada. In the Slavic, it's Marzana, which is very close to San Marzano in Italian, which is once again the garden. So it's just a matter of. And that's where you start breaking down linguistics.
Well, you were on the garden, so we're welcome to it. Linguistics is a lot how people sort of break this down. It's sort of the only way. Otherwise, you'd just be looking at idols, and let's face it, not everyone was the greatest of sculptors with like clay and rock and stone tools and bronze, which worked better than copper, which didn't work at all. But it's all very, very fun and interesting, and I'm not to say that who knows if 4,000 years ago anyone actually believed in these gods or not, but you would have to assume that they did because they built gigantic temples and monuments, and I'm sure somewhere.
It's work to carve, idols out of stone. It's not something you can do in 10 minutes.
Right, but it could be like today, where a lot of people go to church or synagogue every single week, or mosque or whatever, and very devout, and the leaders are very devout, and some of them really are, some of them are faking it, and then there's some schmuck like me, instead of having a podcast, is like he's on the corner just outside the square and going, the gods are all fake, right? It's just a way to tell time for them to control you. And don't take the flu shot. That's my authentic Greek Slavic accent, by the way, for the time adjusted for the correct time periods.
One of my favorite conversation pieces that hardly ever gets brought up, depending on what you're talking about, is actually about Slavic deities and how Tolkien fans kind of get mad because one of the Slavic deities Tolkien took for his own that people don't realize, but because the Slavic god of fertility and hospitality is Radagast.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, so it wasn't all Norse Germanic that he took. He borrowed from a whole lot, which is
yeah, he did, which is it's fine. Like, and I just don't know if he ever admitted to that in any interview / writing. So people are like, no, he made up his own. No. He took quite a bit. He was a scholar, and he knew what he was doing.
Absolutely.
And he was just taking some things that people, back in the 18 and 1900s, no one thought that this would be like worldwide knowledge.
Sure. Yeah, no, I definitely. Well, somebody did. Her name was Helena Blavatsky, and she basically made it her business, literally, to try to do that and to weave different parts and say that her version of all of the myths was one straight line, and then there's still societies that follow that, and then other people sort of stole her shtick and changed little parts of it here or there, and there are people that are still trying to do their version. Tyrus, who we talked about in the pre-show, the former NWA world champion, 2-time best-selling author, when he came on the show, his joke was, let's create the religion of the great megalodon. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm down. I'll write the cosmology. I mean, I think I can do that. I know enough creation myths that I can do one and incorporate a giant, fish into it. That's actually light work. I mean, I don't need to incorporate a Leviathan out of nowhere. I have a Leviathan right there. So yeah, yeah.
That's hilarious. Because back when I graduated high school, I was in a metal band, and the drummer was obsessed with megalodons.
Yeah, but
this was,
apparently there was a shark that was much bigger than megalodons too. Like at some point earlier, I don't know if they overlapped or not. I don't know that much into it, but that was a shock. When you thought the Tyrannosaurus was the apex predator of all time, and then you learn it wasn't. It's like sort of, yeah, it's sort of like one of those moments. It's like, okay, I can deal with it. I'm an adult, but 11-year-old me did not want to hear anything about it. Like I was like, I already got it, man. I ain't trying to hear that. See, I'm like, positive K. Yeah, I have to, so, still a new song as far as I'm concerned. That. So, yeah.
That mentality of 1995 was only 5 years ago. What are you talking about?
Pretty much, yeah. All my shirts are new. Like, no, they're 30 years old. No, that counts. New, right? That's why I said new. What part of new don't you understand? So it's funny. I actually have a shirt that I know when I got it, because I got it from LL Bean, and they sent it to me, and I know where I unpacked the box. And I only lived there for 1 year, so I know what year it was. So it couldn't have been any later than 1993, but since it was a flannel, I probably got it in 1992 in preparation for the winter of 93. And I still have that shirt. And I ask people how old they think it is. They go, oh, it's pretty new, probably 5 years old. I'm like, this shirt is 35 years old. I mean, it will be next year, and chances are, since they had it in stock, it probably is older than that. It's just I've had it 33 years old, 33s. And, maybe it's my Graham Mason shirt. Or my Antichrist shirt. Oh my goodness. Or oh my badness. So much evil I could do with that shirt. Okay. Well, I'm going so, all right. I'm going to censor myself right now and stop that. So let's move on to the mysterious Romani to the extent that you can or are able to draw upon that. Now, okay, so Romani is what people used to call gypsies, which is not a nice word, apparently. It never really was meant to be because they're actually originally from North India, and it was a assertion that I guess they just figured they were Egyptian because that's the closest thing they looked like, and they're like, they're gypsies. So they're sort of like, the Jews and the Irish. So they're never really welcome anywhere. But apparently at some point they fought for the Romans, and the Romans said, all right, well, you can take this area, and this area roughly became Romania at this point. And although not all Romanians are, I'm going to use the bad word, gypsy Romani, everyone in Romania is Romanian, but there's a lot of Slavics and Celts and Mediterraneans and whatever other hodgepodge of various, peoples that are in Central Europe are white folk. Let's call them white people. White people. We're white. Yeah, you and I are white. We can say it. But the Romani are what you call, I guess, I'm just going to say it again. The gypsies. Cher sang about it, so she gives me cover. And, of course, we all know that they serve either happily or unhappily vampires.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, there is the folklore there, but usually when you're talking about the Romani, you're talking about the Strega, or Strega, as you would, more Americanized version, which is a lot of Italian folklore, for lack of a better term, is mixed in with the Strega. Like I said, a lot of this is stuff that I have not been allowed to write down from who I've learned it from.
Nobody write this down.
It's family trade secret stuff. But I mean, they have the basic belief system of the horned god and the moon goddess as the two, top ones. Depending on who, what sect or what area, what tribe you're speaking to, they may hold different things. The best source that I can say for anything written on the subject would be anything written by Raven Gramasi. He was open as much as he could be about the Strega. He wrote quite a few good books. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. So his books have become a little, they're a little harder to come by now because obviously they're out of print, and it's up to his family whether they make more or not. I have a couple of his books, and they're actually really good.
You could commission some monks to go in a tower and then, sort of transcribe them, and then have your own little side business there. Say transformative use or.
I'm asking my wife to grab me a copy of one of my Gramasi books.
If you're any sort of magician, you could just make it appear.
No, it's not quite that easy.
Okay.
They only exist in like 0.0001% of humans or something like that.
Okay, so you don't want to disrupt their molecules. I understand. It's out of respect for the work. It's not the lack of power.
Jupiter for that to happen.
I understand.
That's the whole Arnold Toynbee thing.
Of course. Who's Arnold Toynbee?
Oh, you don't know about Arnold Toynbee?
Nope.
That's a whole thing. Yeah, here's one of his books, Old World Witchcraft.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, he's done a few like that. He goes into as much that can be written about the Strega as without offending any family. I believe he actually did a children's book too once called Strega Nona about the Romani grandmother in the house and how she, the kitchen witch that she is and everything that she does. I make this for you, make you feel better, which no matter what religion or nationality you have, we all have that portion of the grandmother going, here, here's the chicken soup, it's penicillin.
The grandmother is being a little bit scary while benevolent in simultaneous, time is sort of universal. I can't help but notice Strega sounds a little bit like Strigoi. We all learned what Strigoi were from the strain books and the less fortunate show that was on FX or whatever. Though actually, season 1 was okay, but everyone's hair was bad. But anyway, so Strigoi, sort of vampires, but more like mindless vampires, almost like sort of like almost like zombie vampires, almost like the things from The Last of Us, but not like giant mushroom fungus heads. Sort of more. But there were classes of Strigoi in this strain. There's the king vampire, your Dracula, and then he had sort of his lieutenant, whose name I remember was Bolivar. So these things I remember. So is Strigoi and Strega at all related, or is it just shut up? They just start with STR.
I think there might be something in the root causation of the word there, where you can find a correlation between the two of why they sound similar.
Okay, but is Strigoi a Romani thing, or is that more Slavic? I watched what the hell was this show?
That's more Slavic than Romani.
Okay. I watched a show called Hemlock Grove, and it had Bill Skarsgård was in it, and Frankie Jansen, and Jean Grey from the original X-Men movie. Yeah, right. Obviously I said it wrong. And Bill Skarsgård, who's gone on to become extremely famous, just like the rest of his family. Like he's in It. He was in Barbarian. He's in every movie. Like there's a pretty good chance he's the bad guy. In any event. They were Umpirs, who were also sort of vampiric, but a little bit different, and definitely not like mindless Strigoi. So, I'm not saying that Hemlock Grove was accurate, but I did look up Umpir, and it actually does exist, and where Strigoi and Umpirs, and there just seem to be geographic differences. I can't remember them at the moment. There might have been taxonomical differences, if that's the right word to use for, supernatural beings.
Yeah. And it's, and I'm getting back to the actual, connotation of the word, because the thing is, it's, so, like I said, modernized, people will just say Strega instead of Stregaria, when in the older terms, the word Strega was actually closely related to, the Strega was the medicine woman. Like the shaman.
Gotcha.
And the actual plural of Strega is Strega, which is Stregh. Here we go. Streghe. And they were the ones that they were like the loyal order of, I don't want to say nuns, but they were like that loyal order that would keep watch over the shrines and the caves. And all of the sacred spaces.
Yeah, no, there's always the group like that, the order of the order of the that. So and
the Knights Templar,
yeah, right, exactly. The Knights of Malta or whatever, and yeah, the Sisters of the Holy Covenant. I'm just making up stuff, but yeah, there's and I'm sure somewhere they hold secret wisdom that that none can speak of until you've passed the test of celibacy for 9 years or whatever it is, and
I think it was celibacy, but I get you drift.
Yeah, and Pluto's in alignment with Neptune or whatever. All right,
but I mean, that's when I learned things. It was this is said to you in secret. That's why.
I hear that all the time, and I hear especially with indigenous indigenous people sort of like North America, South America, Australia. That's where here. But I hear it from people babbling about it on podcasts all the time and writing books. So I actually got finally, instead of American author writing about Native American, I've actually spoken to a couple of Native Americans, and they're like, "Nah, man, we can talk about." It's like, and one guy's like, I'm here talking about a book I wrote about it. What do you? I'm writing a second book. You know, he didn't make like a whole production. Yes, I went to the elders and I got permission. He's like, no, we want our history to be preserved, and part of our history is our traditions.
And that's understandable. I just know that some things they're closed. Like I don't need to get way off topic here, but I would love to learn more about Obeah, which is Caribbean island type of religion.
Sure,
it's closer related to like hoodoo, but I know that that's really close. Where they're like, "You're not from here. We're not teaching you."
I might be able to help with that. I know some priestesses who, you know, shouldn't be voodoo or hoodoo priestesses based on everything else about them and got indoctrinated. So, you know, maybe they can help make some introductions. I don't know. If you want to follow up on it, I'll follow up and see if anybody remembers me. Because, you know, I don't think I'm that forgettable, but I don't think, you know, being a guest on my podcast once or twice means that you've known me forever. You know, especially chances are if you're on my podcast, you've done other podcasts too. So the Romani, we have a king, queen god, a horned moon. Is it a pantheon sort of like similar? Is there primordial? Is there sort of like a creation story, sort of, you know, a la Greek or biblical?
Not really. That's because because it's that Mediterranean type of area. It all kind of, it all depends on where you heard the story. But I mean, because like with that area, with the Romani and the Italian and all that, that's where it kind of blends. Where you get some classical Roman, you get some Etruscan, and then so like you'll find certain sects will worship Jupiter and others won't.
Right.
And once again, Romulus and Remus. Some will believe in that, some will choose not to. And the problem is also, especially with the Romani, is because they were nomadic, because they were traveling, and because they were persecuted. It's a matter of sometimes, from what I've been told, they would pray to a certain deity, and then they would be cast out of where they were, and they would say, "Well, this deity did not come to me, so why should I pay homage to this deity anymore?"
Right.
And then the tribe may change, and the tribe may start asking for the assistance of another deity instead.
Sure.
So that's how things kind of.
You have to find a patron that comes through for you, at least occasionally. Yeah, I understand.
Right.
Sort of like the Minoans. Like, people know that they have a religion. They have a pretty good idea that it was different than the religions around them because of the symbology and the iconography and whatnot. But nobody knows what it is, until it became, Greekified, which is not the right word, or Hellenized, I guess would be the right word we use now, not then. And also the sea peoples, who people like to call the Phoenicians, but they never called themselves the Phoenicians. It's like just, Phoenicia was one city or whatever, but I think the Phoenicians were not uniform. I think the Phoenicians were sort of like the United Nations of like pirates in the area. So, they probably had a whole lot of, different types of religions and things, sort of like a bouillabaisse of religions on each ship, and probably none of them, the priority was exactly which god they were worshiping. They're probably happy to get help from whomever they could, as they basically Viking, Mediterranean coastal cities.
Right.
And weren't like so much, "You're a heretic, off the ship."
Right. And it's just that mixing. It's that mixing and melding where even if you look into like their folklore, as far as their mythical tales, you'll find different terms that seem like they come from different languages. Like they'll talk about the lupo monaro, which is the werewolf, which lupo, you can tell that's from that.
Yep.
That denomination, but then they talk about the serpent, the Tatzelbaum, which is TATZWURM, which is more Germanic than it is Italian or Greek.
For sure.
So it's like everything kind of melts.
Yeah, I mean,
I firmly believe that the Strega and the Romani were like the first religious melting pot, where they accepted a bunch of different things into one instead of saying this is this is that, this is black and white.
I guess when you're running a lot, you welcome the help and don't get so picky, and you're a little bit more accommodating. Although that's not the story of my people. I mean, a little bit exclusive. So, anyway, still here.
Exactly.
For another generation, anyway. For a little bit longer. Well, that's fun. All right. So, of course, I go back to Doom because that's my roots are Doom, and I'm also Germanic Russian. So, of course, bleak and winter and cold and gray is. I mean, it's not my fault. Yeah. It's not my fault. It's in my DNA. Anything else that we can or should talk about, or any other fun little stuff there?
Trying to think. We covered a lot.
Yeah. I mean, we've gone about an hour. It's a perfectly reasonable stopping point if you sort of like hit the end of your energy and your rope for now, and then we can always do more another time.
I mean, just a couple of little traditions that
sure.
With this stuff, like getting back that I always like bringing up in conversation. So Chernobog, getting back to Chernobog, actually they would have an early passage reveals that they would spit curses into a bowl during feasts to keep them at bay. It was basically like a holy swear jar. And I always like found that kind of cheesy. That and like with the Romani, it's there's a thing too where it's like if you spit in someone's general direction, it's a curse. Or just an insult. So, where was I going with that? I completely forget. But also, they have different traditions for if you spill different things. Like if you spill olive oil, it's bad luck. But if you spill wine, it's good luck.
I see. Yeah, well, you're a happy drunk, I guess.
It's a sign of happiness.
That's fine. Well, there you go.
And in a way, it's appeasing the other world. You are giving your libation of celebration up to share with them.
Well, actually, in coming weeks, I have somebody who's going to be talking about the filmography and the cinematography aspects of Tolkien. Maybe we'll circle back and we'll do sort of the mythological and cultural and folkloric aspects of Tolkien, because I think that would be interesting as well if you're willing. I would really love to do. I'm not volunteering you because I have no idea if you have any idea about this or if there is even any logical through line to this, but like the mythology of Iron Maiden posters, or Iron Maiden. It's like I think this whole thing with Eddie the Beast and all the different places that he is. I mean, I know it's a little bit sympathy for the devil kind of thing, but I don't know. I like to feel like there's more to it, and the name wasn't just like a cool torture device, and all that.
Right.
So I don't know. So food for thought for other days. And like it or not, you're going to find me and see me in places. So if you want to find Joseph J. Alexander, where would they find you?
So you can find me on Twitter at JJ_Alexander, and you can find my YouTube channel. That's I want to make sure I say this right.
Yeah, you should do that.
Well, because you can search for Full Circle Radio Network, and it should come up. However, the exact URL is... Oh, I did update it. So it is Full Circle Radio.
Nice.
YouTube.com/Full Circle Radio. You'll come right to this.
Well, that's why you couldn't make the book appear, because you've already exhausted your magical powers on changing the URL on there. So... if there is a song that you want to associate with what we've talked about, or just it's popping into your head right now, what would you like the outro to be? This question always gets people. well, not always, but like 90% of the time gets people.
Rush's version of The Seeker.
Rush the Seeker. No problem. All right, folks. We thank Joseph J. Alexander for being here again. Maybe he'll grace us with his presence again. No pressure on the air. If you're listening to this show because you're a fan of Joseph, fantastic. That's exactly why we have guests. That's terrific. This is the Garden of Thought. You can find the Garden of Thought on any podcast carrier. It's only audio as of this point, though I have plans to put it onto YouTube. Of course, I've had those plans for years, so we'll see. But you can find it anywhere. You'll generally get 2 to 3 shows per week, and some of them are a lot like this. Some of them are like the other one that Joseph was on, where we're talking to people in wrestling about non-wrestling things, which is how I learned that Joseph knows so much about these other things, and he got roped into doing a different show. And the only difference is that Ikiro Kwan was also there, who's currently being screwed by Cesar Durant, Selena De La Renta, and Don Gatto in MLW, but they have the tequila, so maybe I should switch sides. I'm not sure. Maybe I should turn heel or face on Kwan. I'm not quite sure how that works. I have to figure that out. And sometimes it's almost like newsy. It's almost like a science-based or legal-based, business-based. In other words, there's really no theme to the podcast. It's just things that I'm interested in and that make me curious. Sort of like Joe Rogan, but not as extreme and certainly not as successful. So, if you want to do a Joe Rogan, but you don't think that you're going to actively be supporting a revolution or an insurrection at any time, then maybe this is a nice alternative to you. And private. I could use the money a lot more than Joe Rogan could. I mean, God bless him, but, he's getting like $20 million a year. I am not, and I would like to, so you can help with that. In any event, I'm seeking the $20 million, and that's the segue into Rush's The Seeker. Thank you, Joseph. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Investigating miles. I'm a seeker, I'm a really desperate